Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today we're talking about all things Matic. That's right, we have the COO in the house. His name is Sandeep Nailwal. Thank you very much, Sandeep, for being here to discuss the Matic Network.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Thank you.
No,
Thanks very much.
it really is an honor to have you on the channel, and for all the audience who may have not heard about Matic, it's a great opportunity to really educate and explicate about what you stand for. Now, as I mentioned before, you are the COO of the Matic Network, but let's start with the slogans themselves, Sandeep. Now, it says that you are the scalable and instant blockchain transactions, specifically for block platforms of the future, and you're starting with Ethereum. So let's start with the big question of what exactly are you in a nutshell for those who perhaps haven't heard about the Matic Network?
Sure. So Matic Network is a Plasma implementation, and it's basically built on the foundation of Plasma framework, where Matic sidechains are the sidechains which run alongside or run on top of public blockchains like Ethereum, and there can be other public base chains in future. So these sidechains run on top of your base chains, and then on these side chains the transaction speeds and then the transaction costs are very very optimal and very effective compared to the base chains. And these side chains use base chains security as well as decentralization to ensure the overall off-chain secured and decentralized transactions.
Sure. Now, sorry to interrupt, but I really want to break this down for the audience, and that's why perhaps sometimes I will interrupt. But essentially, Sandeep, what I want to do is try to unpack Plasma itself. So could you tell the audience what Plasma is all about and why you're developing from that?
Yeah. So Plasma framework was designed by Vitalik Buterin and Joseph Fung, and it's basically a framework to specify that if you want to have off-chain transactions, right? So what should be the security specifications? What should be the overall execution specifications of the network in case you want to build a off-chain platform, right? Off-chain kind of system. So Matic Network builds or takes up a lot of philosophical insights from Plasma, then adds its own innovation on top of it to create Matic Network, which provides secured and decentralized off-chain transactions.
I see. Now, just on the note of Plasma, you mentioned that Vitalik and Joseph Fung were key architects of that technology. How complete is that technology? How robust is that technology right now, since you're building upon that?
Yeah, so so Plasma is a framework, as I mentioned to you. It's not a technology; it's more of a methodology of doing or having off-chain transactions. So a lot of teams, and we were also a part of that. Our team, Jayanti specifically from our team, he is the first implementer of Plasma MVP. So Plasma Group has been implementing multiple versions of Plasma. So there are one of the most famous is Plasma Cache that people are working on. Then Plasma MVP implementation was there. Then Plasma XT was also there. So there are multiple kind of Plasma implementations people are working on. Matic Plasma is also one implementation that we have built and made some customizations on the base framework to make it more effective, user friendly, and decentralized.
I see. So what you're saying is that Plasma is essentially an umbrella, I guess, architecture, as you mentioned, for want of a better word, but you're part of that architecture essentially as a technology. Is that fair to say?
So I would say that it's sort of a blueprint. Plasma is a blueprint on based on which you can build your own implementations kind of it, right? So and it's an open discussion still. Like it's not like there is a hard and fast one thing that can be called as Plasma. It's a set of methodologies or a blueprint, as I'm telling you, is that on top of which you should adhere to some of these philosophies and methodologies in order to build an off-chain platform.
I see. Well, thank you for explaining that. Now, let's get stuck into a better understanding your specific technology and exactly what you're trying to do to build upon this framework. Now, let's talk about the off-chain and sidechain scaling solution that you represent.
Yeah. So basically what Matic Network does is that, so Matic Network sidechains are public sidechains, right? So these are not like, gaming sidechains which gamers can or a dApp developer will have to run themselves. No, it's like these are public blockchains, and on these public blockchains are run by the public participants, public node runners and all that, who are running the nodes. And in between the public side chains, there is a decentralized validation layer, which is run by a large number of public participants. And and of course, on the top there's a plasma main chain. So what happens is that on the side chain, users are doing the transactions and everything, and then on the side chains, the consensus is a faster consensus, and the blocks are produced every second, and the users are getting their transactions, partial finality, within 1 second, and the user experience is very, very good. Now on top of it, as I told you about the checkpointing or the validation layer, now on that layer, every period, like there's a specific periodic interval, every start of that period or end of that period, I should say, this checkpointing layer calculates or validates all the transactions that are happening on the side chain, creates a proof, and publishes it to the main chain. So this public checkpointing layer I'm talking about, so this is a fairly decentralized layer where every one of the validator creates that validation, creates that proof, everyone signs it, and then once you have 2/3 of the signature, then the proof goes to the main chain, right? So that's how the validation happens. So on the side chain, the number of participants, like the lowest layer I'm talking about, the number of participants on the side chain, the consensus participants are less. That's why they are able to produce faster blocks. Now what happens is that if the number of consensus participants are less, then there is less decentralization, right? And the whole purpose of decentralized evolution is to have decentralized kind of transactions. So, but these less number of consensus participants are there to produce faster blocks and provide the scalability, have larger blocks, larger number of transactions, higher TPS. Now every interval, this decentralized layer is calculating all the validation and creating a proof and submitting it to the main chain, so that this layer brings in the large set of decentralization and security to the overall transactions that are happening. And then you have the proofs are being submitted on the main chain. So on the main chain, you have something called fraud proofs, which again comes from the plasma methodology. On that, those fraud proofs are something where anybody from the public can come and challenge any transaction or any fraudulent activity that may have happened on the side chain. And if the challenge is accepted, that means the fraudulent activity is detected, that yes, that there is a fraudulent activity, then all the parties who have signed on those transactions, their stakes are slashed, right, as per the
Sure. I do apologize for interrupting, but just a reminder as well, obviously many of the audience are perhaps coming to understand Matic for the first time, so I wanted to sort of bring it down to a more fundamental or more elementary level. So if we can draw it back now, I want to ask you about why Matic. Let's go back into the reasoning, the problems that you foresaw, really help the audience understand the need for Matic.
Yeah. Absolutely. So right now, the blockchain industry, the biggest problem with blockchain industry is the scalability part of it, right? So if you have to do today, you have to do a transaction, the transaction cost fluctuates between, for a simple transaction also fluctuates between $0.50 to like $2, $3. At times it goes to $4, $5, right? So that's not very conducive for the end users, like even for the basic use cases. Even let's say, and Ethereum, the whole purpose of having Ethereum was to have decentralized applications on top of it, right? And on Ethereum, if you have to have a confirmed transaction, let's say we created Twitter on top of Ethereum, right? And you are tweeting it, you are making a tweet, and it takes like 30, 40, 50 seconds to confirm the transaction, and your tweet goes out and you have to pay $2 for that tweet, then not many users are going to use that. So those problems are faced by every blockchain. Even with Bitcoin, sometime back they have extremely high transaction fees going up to even like $20, $30, $50.
Right. So essentially we're talking about efficiency, but I want to bring it down into more specific points. So some of the things I've read about you as to reasons why perhaps are things like improving the proof of work. So perhaps you could talk about that a little bit as well, Sandeep, and even things like upgrading smart contracts. So can we talk about those 2 points as perhaps motivators for this? Let's start with proof of work and extending on that, and then moving across to upgrading smart contracts.
Yeah, so Matic sidechains are primarily, they work on proof of stake consensus rather than proof of work. So because proof of work, you have to have a certain level of difficulty level, and then the miners have to mine or use their computing power in order to mine. Proof of stake provides you, easier consensus mechanism where you don't have to use computing power, rather than you use an algorithm, and the consensus participants create the blocks based on that algorithm. So
Right.
that's power extends, power eco-friendly and power optimal.
Sure.
So
And on that note, Sandeep, may I just interject and ask, currently Ethereum is not using the proof of stake. It's planning to, obviously. Is that going to be an issue for you, given that they are still doing proof of work?
No, absolutely not. So, because Matic sidechains are independent sidechains. So, whatever they are doing at the end of the day on these chains, the transactions are happening, right? And the proof is getting submitted to the main chain, right? So, when the proof is getting submitted to the main chain, it's more like a Ethereum transaction. So, whatever consensus mechanism main chain is using, that does not have any impact whatsoever on the side chains. In
Right.
fact, when of stake comes to Ethereum main chain and the transaction costs and TPS improves, it will even make make Matic side chains more cost effective, because when we have to submit the proof every, let's say, 5 minutes, the cost of submitting the proof goes down. Right?
I
So it's
understand. I see. Well, could we talk now about that comment about upgradable smart contracts? How does that fit in as something that you're developing?
Sure. So upgradable smart contracts is more of a design pattern that is, now slowly coming to the smart contract development, part. So where right now, like if we deploy a smart contract on the main chain, it cannot be changed, especially on the Ethereum main chain. Right now, it cannot be changed. So, having upgradable smart contract is more of a design pattern rather than any change in the protocol. It's more of a design pattern that you design a smart contract in the form of plug and play kind of smart contracts, where if you need to upgrade, let's say a smart contract which is now old and or has found some sort of vulnerability, you create a new version of that smart contract, and then on your main smart contract you update that the address of the underlying smart contract, right? So it's more of a design pattern rather than a protocol. And we are not developing upgradable smart contract. What we have said is that the plasma smart contracts on our main chain would have to be upgradable smart contracts, because they would have to constantly evolve. And in case of any malicious activity found, or any vulnerability found, you need to evolve. So that's why we are designing our plasma smart contracts in the form that they are upgradable.
I see. Now, if we can talk about specifically the topics of speed and finality, because you pride yourself on improving both of those aspects. How are you developing on from current offerings now in, I guess, the off-chain scaling solution options that we currently see?
Absolutely. So, as a user, what you can do is, let's say you have some token, let's say 0x tokens or DAI tokens you have on Ethereum main chain. In fact, we integrated DAI with our testnet some time back. So, let's say you have DAI on main chain, and right now on main chain, if you want to transfer DAI, it will take you $1, half a dollar or whatever that transaction fee, depending on the congestion. Now, as a user, you can simply take this DAI and deposit it to the Matic sidechains. Once you deposit it, in some time your balance of that DAI token appears on the Matic sidechain. Now on the Matic sidechain, your transaction cost is very, very low. Like right now, as per our estimates, it should be like 0.01 cents. Right, 0.01 cents is like in $1 you can do maybe even 10,000 sort of transactions, right? And it will fluctuate a bit, but the whole point being, it will be maybe 100 times smaller than what you see on the Ethereum main chain, right? And in terms of your TPS also, the transaction per second kind of parameter. So in terms of TPS also, what happens is, like on the Matic sidechain, the theoretical capacity of these Matic sidechains is around 65,000 transactions per second. But even if in a practical scenario, it goes up to, let's say, 3,000 or 4,000, even 5,000 kind of transactions per second, that's also is a massive, like even like 500 times the speed of the transactions that we have on the Ethereum main chain. So that's a massive evolvement, and we would be constantly working on increasing the practical limit of the TPS on the sidechain. So you have, and as a user also, you get your confirmation within 1 second.
Right. Now, given that Ethereum also is a prominent platform, it's arguably the most prominent DApp-focused platform out there, and that they have their own EVM, are you concerned at all that they may also be building out some sort of off-chain scaling solution of their own? And if so, what do you say to that?
Yeah. So Ethereum Foundation per se, they have, they have said openly that they are not going to build any layer two solutions of their own. They have left it to the third party, teams. So there are multiple teams like Omisego, Loom Network. These teams are also working on these things because Ethereum Foundation is more of a community, supported project and, true community. I would say one of the true communities in this space. And so they have left it to third parties, and then multiple third parties are building such solutions like 2 3, as I told you, Loom, and then
I see.
Omisego and Matic. So we are also building one part. So that's the part. So
Right.
it will be coming from a third party. That's what.
And given that, Sandeep, I wanted to ask you, what's the relationship you have with the core team of Ethereum, Vitalik included? The reason why I ask is because obviously, as you've explained, Plasma is provided for a multitude of open doors for various developers and their teams. You are one of those teams. So how often are you speaking with the core team of Ethereum as you develop on top of Plasma?
Yeah. So, the core team of Ethereum Foundation is different, but the Plasma Researchers Group, which of course has people from the Ethereum Foundation, like even Vitalik also comes multiple times on Plasma calls. So there, our team also, Jayanti and sometimes Anurag also these days, I mean, they join those calls. These are monthly kind of calls, and they appear on these calls. And wherever, whenever, whatever kind of discussions or problems people are facing, people discuss that openly. Then you also have its research, portal where all the researchers from the Ethereum community put their questions, and if somebody else has some questions which they have answers, they provide their opinions and all that. So there also our team interacts fairly frequently with the people. Yeah.
I see.
So
now, given that so many projects are tiered, I suppose, in the hierarchy of quality, would you argue, Sandeep, that you are top tier? Given obviously that many would argue that Ethereum also is of that high standard.
Absolutely. I mean, I have no doubt in saying that, and our engineering team is, it's already one of the best. And Jayanti per se, I can very confidently say that he is one of the topmost guys in blockchain development in India. I have absolutely no doubts about that. And our team is also like we keep on going to like we were a core part of the ETH India, where all the Ethereum developers and hackers came on, and then our team also was a part of ETH Berlin, and we see and interact with a lot of teams, and I have absolutely no doubt that we are definitely one of the top tier projects in terms of our technology.
Right.
And you can already see, like, there are a lot of teams who are already building on our testnet. Right now we are in the testnet mode, and many teams have explored developing on Matic Network. They are testing out, and then I showed you some of the tweets where some of the teams had done those kind of implementations. Some gaming teams are there who are trying to implement. So yeah, so we are pretty confident. And then we have research partnership also with the Parsec Labs and Decentraland, and Decentraland as a you also
yes, and we will talk about those partnerships.
Yeah.
Can we now, since you've alluded to it, can we talk about your team? Now, you've mentioned that you're very confident that you have one of the best teams in the space. Can you tell us exactly why? So what is, in a nutshell, again, the general expertise of your team, and what sets them apart potentially from other teams they're trying to do something similar?
Sure. So, our biggest strength is, Jayanti itself. So, who's the CEO and the head of technology for us. So he has been a contributor to many, projects. So is, as I told you, that he's the first implementer of Plasma MVP, which he single-handedly implemented. For, such kind of implementations, you can see some instances where other teams would have, got grants, but he single-handedly implemented it. And those things I also showed you on GitHub also. Then he also, like, one of the, like, he's the implementer of core protocol of Wallet Connect, which is the Ethereum grant funded project. And then he has been a contributor to Web3, and we keep on contributing to many other projects also, due to which we have that kind of network. In spite of being from India, we have a very close network with many big projects. And apart from that, I also come from a blockchain development platform. I had, background, and I'm also a senior blockchain developer, and I had consulted many companies on blockchain and their, structuring their systems and everything in the longer run, not only on the business side, but also on the code architecture side. Then Anurag, who's our product manager, he is also very very good at the product side of, or the like the overall end user applications from perspective of the blockchain. And then the other blockchain developers, like we have Vaibhav, and then Vaibhav is one of the few guys who won a lot of hackathons in India, blockchain hackathons in India, and he's also very good. Then we have one person called Shogo Chi. So he's the founder of Crypto Economics Labs from Japan, and he's also very well known in the plasma research forums, and he contributes a lot. And he's one of the leaders for plasma research in Japan. So he also works fairly closely with us. And the overall blockchain team, like the developers we are around
Right.
7 developers now. So all of them come from a good pedigree.
Fantastic. Well, clearly you're very, very supportive of your team. You've explained their credentials as well. And I think it's really important that you did so for the audience, because that is one of the key things that people do look at as they explore the veracity and quality of a project. Now, if we could talk a little bit more on the issues that you mentioned before about decentralization and security, in that you clearly explain in your white paper that you will not be foregoing the importance, or you will maintain the value and uphold the core essence of decentralization and security as you build out scalability, as almost solving the key problem of keeping those three elements together. How are you going to do that, Sandeep?
Yeah, so and I'm very happy that we are specifically discussing that part. So because there are a lot of projects in blockchain scalability arena which have tried and claimed a lot of things about that they can scale to million TPS, 2 million TPS, and those kind of claims. But the whole point is that they compromise on decentralization, and which sort of foregoes the entire premise of this revolution, right? And
Right.
we love Vitalik, and we have for me and our team, he's one of the the leading thought he's one of the biggest thought leaders in this space and overall also. And that's why we want to also remain true to that vision of a decentralized world.
Sure, but if we could move across to how, sorry to interrupt again, let's find out how you're doing that.
Exactly. So basically what we say is that there is one thing we call that scaling trilemma, right? So there are three parts of it. One is the decentralization, the other part is the security and the scalability. And they say that it's very difficult to have a mix of both of these things. So now the architecture that I discussed about you. So I'll just in 1 minute I'll recap that. So on the lower level, consider you on the lower level, you have Matic sidechains, okay, which are fast block producing, less decentralized. Less decentralized, I mean, I would still say that they would be as decentralized as Neo or EOS kind of blockchains, but still less decentralized, because those blockchains have that kind of criticisms around them. Yes, now on top of it, you have a layer which is a public, very highly decentralized public layer, which is a validator layer, right? And on top of this, you have a Ethereum main chain. Now what happens is that for that scaling trilemma, you achieve scalability on the lowest level, where you are producing faster blocks, large number of transactions can be done in 1 second, right? But every periodic interval, this widely decentralized layer that constantly validates whatever transactions are happening on the sidechain. If it finds any discrepancy, any sort of fraudulent activity happening on the sidechain, it initiates a slashing mechanism, where the security guarantees or the stakes of the parties who are involved in the lowest layer, like the sidechain level, they are slashed if they found any fraudulent activity. Okay. But if everything is okay, they push their main chain to the transactions to the main chain. So you achieve partial finality on the side chain, and then you achieve every 5 minutes you achieve a full finality on the main chain also. Now I would like to run a security scenario, right? So imagine that on the side chain, these 7 to 10 or whatever number of the consensus participants are there. Let's say they are colluding on something, right? Colluding on some transaction. Then this layer finds at the time of periodic validation, it finds that okay, there is some fraudulent transaction has happened, and it will slash their stakes. Now let's say in an extreme scenario, and that's what Plasma framework also says, that you have to imagine like the worst. Like imagine all of these people, which is highly unlikely. It's as unlikely that as unlikely as all the Ethereum miners colluding and trying to do, run a 51% attack. But I'm saying, let's imagine that happens, that everybody in this middle layer is also corrupt and colluding on something, and sidechain we are saying already are colluding, right? So every one of them colludes and they publish a false proof to the main chain. Even then, on the main chain, as I told you, that you have fraud proofs where anybody from the public can come and challenge something, challenge a particular transaction. And if the challenge is found, to be unacceptable, everybody who has, colluded and who has, signed on that transaction from this off-chain network, their stakes are slashed. So they are economically disincentivized to do a fraudulent activity.
Sure. Can I just pull it back though, so we're really clear, because I think we're losing, once again, the lay audience in this discussion. So let's talk about some of the core technologies that really do enfranchise solutions for this dilemma that we see. I want to talk about horizontal sharding. I want to talk about Merkle roots with regard to being this POS layer that we're talking about. What specifically are you doing that really shows that you can solve the problem of this tripartite issue?
Okay. So what happens is that the side chain we are already clear, right? So these side chains have less number of consensus participants producing faster blocks. Now this checkpoint layer or the validation layer, what it does is that every 5 minutes it takes up the hashes of all the blocks transactions or all the blocks that have happened in the last period, and then creates a Merkle root out of it, and then publishes the Merkle root to the main chain, right? Now, how one is that this side chain, the validation layer is also running all the nodes that other people in the lowest layer of the side chain they are running. They are also running these nodes with them, right? So every time when they are syncing the blocks, if there's a fraudulent state transition. By that, if I mean that if there is a transaction which does not coincide with the rules of the blockchain, and they find that on this block some fraudulent activity has happened, so their block syncing will get affected, and then when at the checkpointing period they will realize that the block syncing has stopped. That means there is some fraudulent activity. So no fraudulent activity from the lowest level, which is the main side chain level, can go to the main chain.
Okay, so in that respect, it addresses the security, so that's gets a tick.
Yeah. So you have a 3-layer security. That's why I was saying that you have a 3-layer security. On the lowest layer, you have a blockchain which is, as I told you, that as decentralized as, let's say, Neo or a EOS kind of blockchain, as decentralized as that. So you have X level of that level of security on the side chain itself. Then you have an additional security layer which every 5 minutes this checkpointing layer is validating all the blocks that have happened in the side chain. Then you have a second layer of security. And then this layer is creating a Merkle root and publishing it to the main chain for the later fraud proof kind of transactions on the main chain. Now, if this chain also fails, then you have main chain. So you have 3 layers. If this layer fails, this layer detects the security, the fraudulent problems or security issues. If this layer also fails, then colludes, which is highly unlikely, but still, if they are able to do that, and then on the main chain, anybody from the public can come. So that's where you achieve that decentralization, kind of, effects on 2 layers. This layer is highly decentralized, but then even on the main chain also you have fraud tools where anybody from the public can come and, challenge something.
Sure.
It's like a multi-billion-dollar bounty program all the time on the main chain.
Right. So just to be clear for the audience, once again, can you tell us essentially what's the core reason why other people have struggled so much and not yet achieved solutions to this trilemma, and you have? If you could tell us just in simple terms, without any explanation, just key words, what are the core technologies that are literally driving this difference and making you really stand out?
Yeah. So I think that one of the biggest thing that we have done is that the side chains are state-based chain or account-based chains rather than the UTXO-based chains. Then on the checkpoint validation layer, we have created a large decentralized layer which is validating. So on the basic Plasma framework, we have added these 2 customizations plus the fraud proofs on the main chain. So these 3 layers, like the account-based models with less participants, then the validation layer, and then the fraud proofs on the main chain. These 3 things, overall distribute the load of that trilemma. So the scalability comes from this part. Decentralization security comes from these 2 parts, right? So now, am I able to answer that question? That how do you solve that trilemma? I'm saying that one part of the trilemma scalability is achieved at the lowest level, and then the security and decentralization comes jointly from these two levels, which is the validation layer and the main chain. And that's how it becomes different. And I think that the simplicity, like if you ask what is the biggest strength of this, I would say is that the simplicity and the elegance of the overall architecture is what provides you that benefit, benefit. So basically, what you are saying is that you are running a EOS or Ethereum or Neo kind of, or a blockchain. Like, consider that you are running a Ethereum on top of Ethereum, basis a set of security rules which ensure that there will be no, there will be no fraudulent transactions that will happen on the sidechain, and there will not be a centralization of controls of the sidechain.
Right. So essentially, you're making platforms more trustable because of this almost burger-like or sandwich-like system. I apologize for a poor analogy, but if you can imagine, you've got the meat, you've got also the bread on the top, on the bottom. That really is providing for a full package, a full offering. Now, if we can pull this across to the argument of all the different platforms for a moment, are you agnostic by design, and why did you choose Ethereum to start with?
Yeah. So that's one important and one of the greatest strength, I would say, that from our side, that Ethereum already has multi-billion-dollar worth of assets and the projects already created on top of it, right? If we would have started from a, let's say, base chain also from our side, then we would not have got that kind of strength from that. So why? I mean, let me step back and say that the other scaling efforts, like the other blockchains that are coming, which are famous projects. Some of them are famous projects, and some of them have raised in billions also, right? So, but they are building building a blockchain from scratch. So their developer community, their developer tools, documentations, dApps, everything has to be built from scratch, right? Compared to what Matic Network is doing, is that having Ethereum as the main chain, you get all of those, the dApps that are already developed. You get all of them to very easily migrate to the side chain, and then be able to use the scalability features of it. Secondly, the side chains are EVM based side chains only. So whatever smart contracts you have on the main chain, you can simply bring them and deploy them on the side chain. So as a developer, you have zero effort. And if as a developer you have assets on the main chain, you don't even need to migrate any part of your code. You can simply configure or attach with the Matic Plasma blockchain contract, and then from there your users can simply bring their assets or simply deposit their assets, bring it to the side chain, use faster transactions. Whenever they want to withdraw their balances, they can withdraw on the main chain. So it's as easy as that. So the entry barrier, I would say that one of the biggest effects is the entry barrier is very, very small, and then of course the network effects that Ethereum brings in. So that's prompted us to do that. And having EVM based sidechain is also one big advantage, that I was telling you, that the developer documentation, wallets, everything, like the questionnaires that developers keep on asking, developer portals, all of that, developer tools, even we are also developers of some of those tools. And like Dagger is a very famous product that comes from us on Ethereum. So all of those tools, they directly work off the shelf on the Matic network. So we don't have that initial, the gap that we have to fill. Now we have to simply focus on adoption, and that's what is our key, focus in terms of our adoption growth. We want to, bring in a lot of dApps, and I have already shared with you.
Sure, and we will get to that. Now, obviously what you're making the point of is it's been strategic for you to select and focus on Ethereum. It's because of the vast suite of options that they already have built into their network. They have a vast social network, and the list goes on. But I did want to raise the issue, given the climate right now and the recent action we've seen of Ethereum. Are you at all concerned of the vulnerabilities, the price vulnerabilities itself of Ethereum, given that so many startups that we know that have utilized the ICO mechanism for raising capital have actually exited from Ethereum into some other means, whether that be fiat or BTC? Are you concerned at all that the main value of Ethereum in the past has actually been an SOV, a store of value for ICOs?
Yeah, I absolutely not. I think we are passionately Ethereum developers, and we actually believe truly in the Ethereum's strength over time, and we think that eventually Ethereum will be the platform of choice for the people. And these L2, like the layer 2 solutions, many teams are working on them. As you mentioned about Seller, Matic Network is also working on that. We are very confident that all of the scalability issues that we are facing on the Ethereum main chain, they will be solved by one or the other teams on that, and eventually Ethereum only is going to come out as the winner, right?
Sure.
So we are very confident that this is temporary market scenarios, and these will pass by, and Ethereum is going to stay.
Sure. But if we could talk about also Casper for a moment. Now, obviously, whenever we talk about the inherent problems of any main platform right now, scalability comes up pretty quickly. So are you confident in this respect that Ethereum is at pace with some of those up and coming generation 2 platforms that arguably are addressing some of the scalability issues as rapidly, if not faster than Ethereum?
Yeah. Yeah. So see, Ethereum, as we all know, that it already has a multi-billion-dollar economy running on top of it. So making changes on Ethereum is of course a tedious and very slow process, because you have to take care of all of those, like not to affect that already running things. And the project which are coming new, they have that advantage, second mover advantage that they call in the business. So they have that. But having said that, I think that the network effects will provide enough runway for Ethereum to bring on whatever changes that they wanted. Secondly, even if those main chain scalability things do not come, these sidechain layer 2 solutions would be able to solve many of the problems, and maybe Ethereum will become just what we all expect Bitcoin will become. That Bitcoin based chain will act for larger, bigger transactions, and then the smaller micro transactions and other kind of use cases will be built on something like Lightning Network. So we also are the believers in the same thing. And secondly, for Matic Network specifically, we are not, even if Ethereum is the first base chain that we have integrated, and we passionately support Ethereum and everything, but even then, let's say in future some of these other base chains are successfully able to build that kind of ecosystem and everything, we can simply add them as more base chains. So our architecture is flexible. Side chains can be multiple, base chains can be multiple. So for us, it's not a concern at all.
Sure. Now, we talked about sidechains. You are essentially, focused on that as part of building out your own network. Can we talk about the broader scope of interoperability as well, in the sense of your agnostic position, so we can come to understand what your future plan is?
Yeah. So as I told you, that currently Ethereum base chain is the first base chain that we have added, and we'll continue to focus on it for the short term till the time there's a robust and strong, solid system which is working, and people are able to deploy their smart contracts and all that stuff. Later on, we want to add more base chains, the other popular smart contracting platforms. We want to add them as base chains, and then once these are added as base chains, what happens is that people can bring their assets, like you can bring any, let's say we deploy Neo as base chains, and people would be able to bring NEP5 on Ethereum. They can bring ERC20 tokens on the main chain, and then have all the swaps or whatever we want to have. Like we can have a DEX, like a true DEX, which can have assets from multiple base chains, like ERC20, NEP5 kind of assets, all of them at one place, and people are able to trade between them also. So that kind of interoperability feature could be there.
If we could talk about a difficult topic often for the COO, and that is your metrics, that is your ICO, that is the tokenomics, as they say. Let's start firstly with the ICO topic itself. Are you doing an ICO? And if you are, can you tell us the details of that?
So we are going to do an ICO, and our token metrics and everything is still is being finalized, and it should be out in public very soon.
Okay, so just to clarify, you're currently finalizing the details, but respectfully, obviously, for those who are currently trying to understand as best they can what all the facets of the Matic network, can you tell us something? What can you deliver in terms of information with regard to those metrics?
I would say that because recently we had a very very sort of important meeting between our advisors and very key stakeholders, and evaluating the market conditions and all that. We did not start officially our ICO campaign since a long time, and we have been in public domain, and people have been asking about it. But then we had a very important meeting with our advisors and the key stakeholders, and we are still finalizing a few things, and I would not like to comment at this point in time because we may change a few things, and I don't want to be in a situation
Sure.
where I say,
Well, can I just try and coax some illusions at least with regard to whether we're talking about high raises, low raises. You even mentioned before some projects have come forth really trying to raise almost exorbitant amounts of money. Can we
no,
at
no,
least
absolutely.
say you're going to be releasing some sort of low raise?
Yes, yes, it will be a very fairly low to medium raise. I mean,
Mhm.
it is going to be that.
Okay, now just for transparency reasons, can
Yeah.
you assure us that you are going to make sure there's vesting periods for team members? Are you going to provide some sort of long lockup terms to really ensure the long-term viability of the project?
Yeah, yeah, that I can already tell. So those things are fine, right? So that I can already tell that the team's vesting periods are long, like 3 to 4 year kind of vesting periods are there. Even the company reserves are also locked up for 4 years. Even our advisors, and we have some of the very good advisors in that term. Their terms are also like very longish, and the investors also we want to onboard in our the early stages. We also expect them to come with us for a long-term horizon and not come as a short-term investors, and
Right.
be with us in building this.
So clearly you're doing things to, I guess, avoid the classic dumping that we've seen in many
No,
instances.
no, no.
And you have that guarantee already, as you're stating. So can we talk
Mhm.
about the state in which you are at now? So have you done a seed round
Mhm.
already?
Yeah. So we had done a very small, I'll call it a friends and family or early supporter kind of round, which was very, very small, like 150K kind of round we did.
Okay.
And, now only, and we raised only the like the amount that we can reach this stage where we are now very close to our alpha mainnet kind of situation, and
Mhm.
we have all of our architectural things sorted out, like all of them, and then only we wanted to go rather than having a white paper and raising money and then figuring out. We don't want to do that, so that's why
Sure.
we raised, like in February, raised a very small amount, and now we are at this state, and now we are going to be going for a public sale
Okay.
in this
Now,
quarter.
thank you again for that transparency. Can I ask,
Yeah,
because it will come up, about bonuses or
yeah,
discounts? Is
yeah.
that built in, and can you reason that for the audience, perhaps to better understand what you have done?
Yes. So for the like the January and February, like friends and family round, as I told you, which already is more than half a year. Even for these people, there was a good amount of discount for them because these are very early investors, and even then their tokens are locked up for 1 year after the listing. So their overall lockup would be around 2 years. So and then we would be speaking about it and making a blog post that whatever was their discounts and what are their lockup periods and everything. And yeah, and for the for the now the seed round, the actual seed round, and the private sale rounds, we would be having discounts which are absolutely not exorbitant, which as you have also mentioned multiple
Hmm.
times, that which encourage dumping and kind of stuff. So larger investing periods, and decent enough or very low kind of bonuses basis the kind of risks they have.
Right. Well, thank you, Sandeep, for explaining that. Now, can I ask you about your strategic investors with regard to VCs, whether they
Yeah,
be traditional VCs or whether they be crypto VCs?
yeah.
What position are you at to tell us some of those core investors?
Yeah. So as I told you that we actually started our ICO campaign very recently, like it would be 3.5 weeks back. I mean, we started, and we are in very good, stages with multiple of these, firms. Some of them are traditional VCs, and some of them are, quite large and reputed
Hmm.
VC funds. So mostly, these would be there in the in our core things, and what we expect from those funds and these VCs is to help us build this ecosystem, help us connect and build these product partnerships and bring dApps on board. So these would be the things that we are expecting from them, and these would be some very fairly big names on this, and we
I
are
see.
very close.
So what I wanted to really get at, and I think you've answered it almost already, is
Yeah.
are you demanding value add? Are you demanding services, not just simply a brand from all of the different VCs and strategic investors?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why we have not been taking it. Like otherwise, we have a decent enough, public attention in that, and we have received multiple. Like I cannot even count them. Like with these small investments and like these smaller time investments, we're not taking those investments at all. We
Right.
would like we would better do a larger public sale than to take up these small funds at discounts which would come for a short term. We would not like to do that.
Right. Now, given the climate at the moment, we see an overall decline in the whole crypto economy. Is it fair to say that you're going to plan out the crowd sale to suit the market? Will you hold off as many are currently doing?
I think that for good projects, this can be a difficult time also, but it's an opportunity also. So for good projects, I think things will happen perfectly. Of course, we would try to have do it at a better time where the markets are better, but we are confident enough that by the time we bring out our alpha mainnet and some of these dApps, we should be very well poised and we should get enough attention to complete our funding. So
Right.
I'm not really bothered about market conditions that much.
Sure. And Sandeep, are you finding that already you're oversubscribed in terms of interest from these different sectors or these different VCs?
So that's what. So if I wanted to raise money only, I would have completed the fundraise like 1 month back. But we want the good funds, and as I told you, the value adding funds who can actually bring in synergies to the project and help us grow in the long run. The project will raise money eventually. I mean, it's not a concern for us.
Right. Well, thank you again for this really clear discussion. Now, I want to go back again to use cases because they are listed in your white paper. If we can talk about some of those very specific ones with regard to what you will be able to do, such as you mentioned the DEX, atomic swaps, payments, liquidity providers, identity is an interesting one, personal data, securitization, and infrastructural. Can you talk about those ones perhaps we haven't talked about in terms of use
Yeah.
case?
Yeah. So the larger purpose of Matic Network is to enable generic smart contracts. So when you have generic smart contracts on the side chain, then any use case that blockchains have that blockchains proponents have said, all of them can be done on Matic Network. It can act as a currency, it can act as payments, it can act as your applications, dApps. All of them can happen. One of the important use cases that we are looking at is the DEXs. Like we want to, because currently on the main chain, Ethereum main chain, if you see the DEXs are there have been some superlative projects like 0x who have absolutely great technology, but then on the main chain the transaction speeds and the cost is so high that the adoption will be difficult. So we want to have some of these protocols on the side chains. So right now we have the payments and asset transfers fairly well done on the side chain. Now our focus is to bring some of these protocols like the token swap or liquidity pools, your dexes on the side chain, and then once that level happens, and then bring in the overall generic smart contract facility. So what we want to enable users is that or enable dApp developers. Like one thing is very different for us is that our focus is more on the developers, because our direct customers are not end users. Our customers are dApp developers. Once dApp developers are easily able to develop or effectively able to develop their applications, then users will come. If somebody is able to build one CryptoKitty kind of viral application, you will get thousands of users. So that's the fundamental thought process that we go through. So we do a lot of developer community promotion. Not that the main thing is that coming back to the technology is on those use cases. What we are enabling is that we are enabling the environment to build these applications. So as I told you that generic smart contracts, so asset transfers is the first part, right? So once you have asset transfers, you can enable a lot of use cases on top of it, right? Second, you have exchanges like the DEXs, right? So once you have a DEX protocol over there, then the end users can, or the developers can build various kind of DEXs and use cases on top of it. Similarly, it goes for the liquidity protocol, lending protocol. So we are working very closely with some of the leading lending protocols on this space, and some of them we expect to be having their instances on Matic side chains. So what we will enable is these protocols and these tools. So like Dagger also, we recently had a very it was very well received in the developer community. We had a Zapier integration with our tool called Dagger, which is a real-time notification tool. So, and then we are also in discussions with some of these top teams who are working on storage solutions, for example, or who are working on, let's say, your communication protocols on the blockchain, for the blockchain, right?
Sorry to interrupt, but what you're saying is you're building a one-stop shop. You're building in Dagger, which is a unique technology that you've built in. You've got the wallet as well and many other things. I guess the thing, once again, not to digress, but I want to talk about, once again, the dApps, because it's mentioned also that there are currently dApps being built on as you move into AlphaNet, in your testnet. So can you talk us through some of those dApps that are already building onto your own ecosystem?
Yeah. So we have already mentioned that one of the top 100, projects by market cap, they are also already, exploring building on top of Matic Network, and it's a very close, collaboration.
Can you mention the name?
So I think we want to have a joint declaration with them.
Okay.
So
but
I would
the top 100.
Yeah, it's in the top 100, that's for sure. So they will be doing that announcement, and we want them to announce that and everything. So those things are there. Then there are applications based out of India. There are some Indian companies who are building. Like one is a ad network kind of application who's building. Then somebody is building an India-based stablecoin, INR-based stablecoin. So that is also in the works. Then there is an INR wallet company who's trying to build, using blockchain technology. Of course, not blockchain as a currency, but building blockchain as a backend to their wallets. They are exploring. Then there's an Australia-based project called Plentix. So they are a referral marketing, ecosystem. They are exploring Matic Network to build their, referrals, because referrals can be thousands in number. So they are there. Then we recently integrated, a stable coin on our testnet. Once that testnet comes through, then, imagine you have a dollar stable coin, and, you have 1 second transactions at almost zero cost. Then for dApp end developer, you can build these wallet applications like, circles and swipes, or Paytm for India, for example, of the world, which can really go viral, and users can use them to, to make their generic payments, split the bills between the friends and all that. Those kind of dApps are also in development. And then the other part is, and that brings me back to the low entry barrier. So many of the Ethereum applications who use Ethereum wallets, and who use Ethereum ERC20 tokens for payments and all that, they don't even have to do any kind of development separately for Matic. So I mentioned about dAppPOS, right? So they are building a point of sale solution. So their application, you simply have to go and add Matic Network as a network, and you are good to go.
So essentially, you're making it very seamless, and you've mentioned a multitude of dApps already that are onboarding onto the system. Do you expect, that this is going to be quite expedited, given that you're so far ahead, arguably, in this discussion already, and you haven't even moved to alpha yet? Do you anticipate there'd be a boom? You are in India; it is a huge population. Is this all a boon for you?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that Indian companies in blockchain space specifically, they may not have been, in the forefront for the protocol race till now, because blockchain development has been in the protocol era right now. But once it comes to the dApp part, Indian companies would be like all over the place. And right now, like for mobile development, if you see, mobile and web development is a huge hub, right? And India is a superpower in technology. Once the blockchain also comes into the dApp phase, where the infrastructure is sorted and the end user dApps are going to be developed, India is going to be like one of the major forces in this. So yes, that's a big boom. And due to that low entry barrier, that's one of the biggest strengths for Matic Network. If we are able to achieve few things in order, like deploy our mainnet and everything, I think that there can be a scenario where there can be viral adoption into Matic Network because of the entry barrier. For you, if you were a developer, it doesn't cost you a dime to simply test that how it works on Matic Network. And once you go on Matic Network and see the user experience, then you, as a developer, you cannot resist having your dApp.
Right. So Sandeep, sorry to interrupt, but do you think, given all of this information you're providing, that Matic could easily be in the top 100 itself?
I mean, that should happen. Like, we don't see any reason that it should not happen. It should happen. Absolutely.
What about the top 10?
Why not? I would say why not, but again, it's a big long path, and we believe in doing and then talking. So I would leave that to first doing. First, let's do it, and then maybe let's have a deal. Like when we do that, we'll have a interview with you.
Good
Like
answer,
once
and
again.
I'll hold you to that. I'll certainly be calling if you do make the top 10, and I wish you all the best in that endeavor. And great answer, by the way. I think in that respect, in talking about doing, it's all about really what every project should be focusing on, and that is proof. Now, let's talk about specific partners, and let's go back to India for a moment. Now, one of your partners is Zebi. It is an Indian blockchain project itself, and then you also have Decentraland. Now, again, you've provided key arguments as to why you feel that India is ripe and ready for really exploding in the dApp setting. So, what is this connection with Zebi, and why is it relevant to you? How does it help?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Zebi has been like one of the top blockchain projects in India, and biggest thing is that they have actual, users and companies using their Zebi application, right? So, there are multiple state governments in India who are using their products, and we have a very good rapport with Babu, who is the CEO of Zebi, and he's really one of the pioneers in this space in India. And what Zebi is right now doing is that they are exploring some of the enterprise blockchain use cases. And Matic Network also, our long-term focus is that can we have these side chains? Can we have privacy-enabled enterprise side chains, which are dedicated enterprise side chains running on the same infrastructure, but they are privacy-enabled so that enterprise adoption can come. So that is one area where Zebi and Matic Network are working very closely. So we interact with their technical team also, because they are also building something similar. And then the identity is also one part where they have keen interest, and we also have a key interest in terms of having an identity layer, either identity layer on Matic Network, or having a collaboration with some of the leaders in this space, maybe like Civic or Evername or something like that, who are already built on Matic Network, and they can easily have one more instance. I'll not call it a migration. It can be one more instance on the Matic Network, and then we can have that ID layer. So as I was talking about the end-to-end developer stack, where you have smart contract, notification, and your storage and all that, identity is also key part. So in the future, imagine you have dApp developers having all of these tools with them, and they simply have to configure them or build a end user use case with them with identity and everything built in. That can be the killer kind of ecosystem which can propel the blockchain to the
Sure.
the mass.
And once again, thank you for that. Now, if we could talk about your roadmap as well, can you tell us some of the key things coming up? Very specifically, what's some exciting things we're going to see unfold for the Matic Network?
Yeah. Sure. So first and the foremost is to bring our alpha mainnet. So what we want to do is that before we go to our public sale, we want to have alpha mainnet, at least our alpha version of our mainnet working. And that's what we said that doing first and then asking for anything. So that we want to do, and that's the first thing in our repertoire. We want to do in 4 to 6 weeks. We want to bring in our alpha mainnet, and then once that alpha mainnet is there, we expect at least in sometime late in this year having a beta mainnet over there, and having at least the the early versions of the dApps that I told you, like even including the one of the top 100 coins, so top 100 projects. So having their early versions of their applications, marketplaces working on Matic Network, and then in the first quarter of the next year, we would like to do it much earlier, but I don't want to commit a date as yet. But in the first quarter of the next year, we want to go with the full-blown alpha mainnet where people can, or the multiple dApp developers can.
Right. Well, that sounds like you really are planning clear, I guess, milestones ahead of time. Now, are you on track with all of those plans?
Yeah. I mean, ahead of those plans. I just told you these conservative timelines because, I want to be able to do it, on the date or before that we commit to you. So we should be able to do whatever dates we're saying, we should be able to do before that.
And if you don't mind, I ask, how big is the team, in fact, that is working with you, Sandeep, in terms of number right now?
Yeah. So right now we are a team of 11. 8 people are fully focused on technology and the product management, project management, and the developer side of it. And only 3 people are working on the the marketing and the partnership side of it. Total 11 people.
So 11 is quite substantial, given that you haven't completed your ICO. Do you anticipate that's going to grow substantially as you move through? You
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely, and then we like we would like to have some developers from Berlin. We have a lot of respect for the developer community in Berlin, and maybe some one or two developers from the Valley also, because they bring in a lot of perspective, as well as the local developer community around them. So yeah, that is going to substantially increase also.
let's discuss your GitHub. How transparent is your code? How accessible is your GitHub for the public, especially for the devs?
Yeah, yeah. So our plasma contracts are public from day one, and we invite reviews and suggestions on top of them. And if you go to our GitHub and see and check out our stargazers part, where which all projects are watching our project, you will see that a lot of top projects, developers are already have star marked their repository. That means they are tracking the updates or commit that we keep on doing over there. That means tracking our progress. And in terms of then we also have some of the our private repositories where we are working on some of these solutions. So our policy is that once we reach a certain level of maturity on them, on those solutions, then we will put them out in the private, on the public, and then invite public open source developers also.
Now, I want to sort of move across to the challenging discussion of criticisms and risk. Now, every blockchain startup comes with inherent risks. What are your core ones, given that you would have heard, no doubt, feedback from some of the social streams that you have built up through your social network? What's the feedback been from the people with regards to some of the criticisms?
So I think that we have not heard any specific risks from the external parties. But our philosophy and our thinking is that the risk is only if we are not able to achieve adoption, and that's why our efforts are always focused on keeping the entry barrier to as low as possible, because our only the end goal and relentless end goal is on adoption.
Now, I also wanted to talk to you about essentially the supporters of your project. Now, we had some discussions already. Are there any prominent figures that have also jumped on board? We've heard some mentioning of the Matic Network in the influencer space. Are you currently discussing, the prospect of working with anyone that's, a really prominent influencer or prominent figure, in the space?
Yeah. So, I mean, I did the one part of your question was the advisors also, or it is only for the influencers part. So, if it is more, let me take both. So both. So basically, in terms of advisors also, one, head of engineering from Coinbase, Coinbase wallet, Pete Kim has joined us as our advisor. And then we also have, the CTO and the CEO from Decentralized, so these are very prominent and people in terms of the technology expertise as well as the business expertise. So those are there, and we may be getting more people on that, especially on the tech front. And you will see that these people would be people who can add value to our product, rather than being big entities to make the project look like big. These will be the people who are going to contribute in our product. So that's
right.
one key part.
So essentially, moving beyond brands.
Exactly. So these people, all of them, like Esteban is very closely involved, and he's also well-known in plasma space, and he's closely involved. Ari is involved with me specifically for our business strategy and user adoption, and they have a lot one of the best user adoption, I would say, in blockchain space, compared to whatever projects have. And then Pete is also helping us in our wallet strategy, and you would have seen that we are the implementers or the core implementers of Wallet Kind protocol. So that is also one part. So apart from that, from the influencer perspective, my strategy over there is that you need a big community to support a project, because these will be the end users. They need to know about Matic Network. So we don't have a strategy where we want to have anybody or any single person who is acting as a community
Or leader, essentially.
For us, we want to work with all of them, and we want to have a harmonious relationship with every one of them. And as I told you, that after meeting few of them, Ian and all that, I find all of you guys to be really great people, and that's why you are at this globally most known people. You have to be good. Hey, all of you.
Right,
Thanks a
and
lot.
you've made it clear that your focus is really on trying to ensure that your name and your work is distributed throughout the opportunities that are afforded by these social networks. So I think that essentially that's the way in which this whole architecture is supposed to be, is distributing the information so people can become aware, and hopefully we're doing that today. Now, obviously, it's been a very detailed discussion today, and I do appreciate all the details that you provided. Sandeep, is there anything you'd like to say as a final statement on behalf of the Matic Network to really provide, information and address the community one last time today?
Yeah, so I would say that the community should come to Matic Network as or specifically people who are really interested in the decentralized applications. We all invite them, humbly invite them to join our community, and and get involved in the parts over there. And specifically, I would like to come back to the developers. If any developers are seeing your interview, and I think that there would be a large number of developers who will be seeing your interview, I would say that get connected to us. My name, my Telegram is there on my Telegram channel. If you are a developer, you have a strong GitHub, do get connected to us, and please join us in building really super cool dapps who can really go to the mass adoption scale. So yeah, that would be my
Right.
message.
Well, thank you very much, Sandeep Nailwal. It's been an absolute privilege speaking with you today. You are the COO of the Matic Network. And once again, to rehash, they stand for the scalable instant blockchain transactions, firstly for Ethereum, and then moving beyond as an agnostic design. They are certainly aiming to bring massive scaling to enable mass adoption via layer 2 scaling solutions that are off-chain. So Sandeep, thank you for your time. We look forward to learning more about the Matic Network as you move into alpha, and then far beyond as you become arguably a mainstay solution for essentially blockchains and for enterprise and for business beyond. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks a lot, Brad. Thanks a lot. It has been a great pleasure speaking to you and knowing you, as a person also. It's been a pleasure all around. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.